This dinner party actually started with a request from my mom. She asked if I would host her birthday dinner this year, and of course I said yes. Now, my mom is a serious book person, especially a good period piece love story. The cheesier the romance, the better. So I started thinking, what if the whole dinner felt like a story? Honestly, almost every single dinner party I plan does feel like a story, but this one I really wanted to feel like the whole party was pulled out of the pages of a book. That's how The Tale of a Lifetime was born. A dinner where each course feels like its own little chapter. And like any good story, it starts with a blank page. So the first thing I had to figure out was the menu. For this dinner, I wanted the menu to feel like the cover of a book. Something whimsical and feminine, but not over the top. You may not know this about me, but I hand design all my menus on my iPad in Procreate, so there's always a little bit of experimenting involved. I went back and forth on colors and textures for a while, but menus still have to be functional at the end of the day, because everyone needs to be able to read what's on it and what they're eating. After I go back and forth forever about color, texture, did I actually draw that leaf okay? Then comes my actual personal nightmare, which is picking the font. I am extremely particular about typography, so this part always takes longer than it should, but once the design is finished, the real fun begins, deciding what we're actually going to eat. Once the menu was finalized, it was time to actually start cooking. My mom made the decision about what we were going to eat very simple. She wanted the cheesy garlic pasta and steak from one of my previous videos. So my job was really just to fill in the gaps and actually make the food, which meant now it was actually time to start cooking. And like most dinner parties I host, there was a lot of prep. So I started the day before with bread. Because in my opinion, every good pasta dish deserves fresh bread. Also, naturally, I decided that the night before a dinner party was the perfect time to experiment with something that I had never made before: sourdough baguettes. Now, I have never made a baguette in my life, but honestly, why not? Worst case scenario, my mom will still love me. Now, during the prep of these baguettes, I also learned about there are these things that hold baguettes when you bake them, and I do not own them. So let me show you this absolute Clark innovation that happened in this kitchen. Because I don't have these holders, I decided to make them out of tin foil by just rolling up a bunch and then forcing it underneath a larger sheet to create almost like a giant taco holder. Now, is this incredibly wasteful amount of tinfoil? Possibly. Did this absolutely help create a wonderful baguette shape? Yes, and I'm happy I did it. The plan was to make fresh baguettes for the cheese board and rosemary and sea salt focaccia to go along with the pasta. Because if you're serving cheesy garlic pasta with steak, the bread situation needs to be taken seriously. One of the things I take most seriously when prepping for an event is my ingredients, because if you don't pull out the best of the best, your clients will definitely notice. And whether it's my mother, my best friend, a client, everyone is getting the best of the best. And every little detail matters. Every little bit of this rosemary I pulled off, and absolutely pulling out my favorite sea salt for this focaccia. Do you see these bubbles? That's amazing. Celtic sea salt, fresh rosemary, in-season vegetables, fresh flour. Everything, every little detail, it can come up, and taking that extra little bit of time makes such a difference, and I'm so proud that that's how I cook. Dinner parties always look elegant on the table, but But the kitchen beforehand usually tells a very different story. When I say experimenting with a baguette beforehand was a bad decision, it was, because I also needed to turn my oven into a steam room for this. But at the end of the night, the kitchen was full of bread, and prep for tomorrow was finally underway. The baguettes were finished, the garlic was roasted for the pasta sauce, and all that was left to do was bring everything together, pack it up in these cute little bags I have, and of course you know, I brought the lasagna tote, because the next step was turning an empty room into a dinner party. For this dinner, I wanted the table to feel like stepping into the pages of a book. Since the whole night was inspired by my mom's love of romance novels, I leaned into that idea with a few vintage books scattered around the table. Each place setting had its own menu, designed to look like a little book cover. I kept the rest of the table fairly simple, so the details could stand out, but also so we could see each other across the table. That's something I think about all the time with tablescapes, is if it gets too complicated, you can't actually even talk to the person across from you. I also wanted to do small florals for the table, but my hydrangeas were giving me a fit. So I just put them in some cold water to try and perk them up. This is a great tip for hydrangeas. When it comes to florals, I always say less is more and don't overcomplicate things. My mom's favorite color is purple, so I took this opportunity to work a little bit of that color into the table without being too much. Popped it right in the center, and this is what we had, a nice little spread for everyone to be able to see, enjoy each other, and still really get the ambiance of we're telling a story here. With the table finally ready, it was time to head back into the kitchen and actually cook this meal. Now, if you've made it this far in this video, and you've watched any of my other videos, you'll notice that I have not spoke to the camera at all. And that's because when we get to an event, we are locked in, mama. There is no time. This is when the chaos starts, because there is a list. It lives on my iPad, and that list is guiding this entire process. And as with any event, the first thing we're going to do is the first thing that everyone is going to eat, which is this charcuterie board that I did. We started off with some Bosc pears. I did some rosemary, Marcona almonds, and some dried apricots. I also did this orange marmalade to add a little bit of zhuzh to go with the cheese selections I made. For cheese, I did a very soft brie, a manchego, and a dill havarti. Now these were very intentional, and one thing I hate about brie is if you don't slice it. It is so difficult to deal with. I think you just need to slice it and find a way for people to be able to pick it up, because if you're not actually baking it, it's going to be chaotic. For the rest of the cheese, I always try to keep it functional to pick up, a good bite size, and something that's going to look really nice on this plate. We can't forget the meat selection either. I decided to do a nice prosciutto. I think this is a classic for everyone. And I also did a mild salami. Fit in the crackers wherever I can, but I always make sure there's plenty, because that is the one thing I refuse to restock. To give myself a little breathing room later, I also prepped all of the salad add-ons before everyone got here, so that way everyone could decide what they wanted on their salad, and I could put it together quickly in the midst of the chaos of grilling the steaks. To go with dinner, I picked this Toscano red wine because Toscanos typically are a Sangiovese-based blend, and that usually means they're medium-high acidity and moderate tannins. This will have notes of like red cherry, dried herbs, light oak, and it's not super heavy steakhouse wine like a Cabernet. It's brighter and more savory, which worked well to balance out the pasta dish we were having this with. I also had a white wine option because that's what my mom enjoys the most, and I think they both paired nicely with the meal we ended up having. I also opened this wine about an hour before everyone showed up because it does need to aerate a little bit in order to really get the nice brightness that personally I enjoy. It was not the best straight out of the bottle. Steak time means you're coming with me on an adventure, and we are carrying this outside. I put this in here to show you just how actually chaotic this is sometimes. It is not the most beautiful or elegant thing I do, but I love bringing you all along with me, and yes, I did leave that door completely open behind me to come out to this grill. Steak always feels a little dramatic when it hits the grill, but it's the perfect pairing for a rich pasta like this. And even though it's a little extra work to make sure each of these was cooked perfectly for each guest, it's worth the effort to have an extraordinary meal. Eventually, everything starts to come together. The sauce is finished, the pasta is ready, the salads are prepped, and suddenly it feels like a plan might actually work. And just like that, it was time for dinner. After days of planning, testing recipes, designing menus, and hoping everything would work out, the table was finally full. This is always my favorite moment of hosting. When the kitchen quiets down, everyone sits down together, and the food finally gets to do its job. Dinner parties are funny like that. You spend hours, sometimes days, prepping something that only lasts maybe an hour or two, but somehow those few hours always feel worth it. Good food, good stories, and the people you love around the table. That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining me for the tale of a lifetime, and I hope it inspires you to host a little dinner of your own. Thank you for joining me at the table again this week, and I'll see you at the table again soon. Bye!